Welcome to the Choosing Cheer podcast, the show about the joy of Jesus in all of life's moments. I'm your host, Nicolette Bell, and my hope is that you'll see his joy is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in his presence. Let's go there together. Hey friends, I'm really excited about today's conversation. As you know, in this season, we've been talking about choosing cheer in life's everyday, ordinary moments. And that's been rooted in Romans 12, verses 1 through 2 from the Message translation, where Paul writes, "So here's what I want you to do, God helping you take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing that you can do for him." And we've talked about this in a variety of ways this season, but one area that I felt like we've been missing in our conversation is in the topic of communication. And for those of you who don't know, this is what I studied in my undergrad and my graduate degree is in communication studies, not marketing communications. I did a little bit of training in marketing, but really how we communicate, what that looks like. And so I'm really a geek about this. And so communication plays such a huge part in our daily interactions. And when thinking about this, I just felt like that was something that we were missing. And so when I was praying and thinking about having this conversation, I couldn't think of anybody else I wanted to have it with besides my friend, Sarah Beth Walker. Sarah Beth, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm always so excited to be here. I can get on my tangents, and I just love talking about all kinds of things like this.
Yes. Well, for those who haven't heard you on the podcast before, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have a private practice in Ridgeland that I work 2 to 3 days a week. And the rest of the time I'm with my 3 boys, and I'm married to Adam, who's a worship pastor here in Jackson. And we've been married almost 9 years. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow. Yes. So when thinking about this, I kept thinking about you because you and I can have some really good conversations.
We get deep really fast
on different topics. And I know so much of what you deal with in your practice really is rooted in communication, helping people communicate better within their relationships. And so I just thought, let's just talk a little bit about how communication affects our joy and our cheer, and how maybe miscommunication really affects our relationships with those we love.
Yeah. I would say probably every single person I see, and I see age ranges from very young child to older adult. And in some way, there's communication issues between maybe a mom and a daughter, or a husband and wife, or whatever it may be. And a lot of times we view our own lenses, as like I like to say, we wear our own glasses about how we feel about things, about how we view things, about how we view how we think other people view us. And a lot of times that can be rooted in a lot of trauma that we maybe have experienced, little trauma or very big trauma. And so we kind of almost can assume a lot of times what the other person thinks about us and feels about us. And while sometimes, it may be true, or they have said that actual thing to that person, a lot of times it's rooted in our own trauma and the things that we've been through. So
maybe give us an example of how that lens, the different perspective, those glasses can affect that communication.
Yeah. So, I'll even give an own example in my own life, not even in my office. The other day, Adam and I were talking, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was on. But the premise of it was he had said he wanted me to do something for him, and I took it as he was being critical of me. So I reacted back very quickly, and I started crying, and I was like, I didn't want you to view me that way. That's not what I was intending. I have the best intentions, all that. And so we had to step back from it to say, hold on, wait, what's going on? And he was like, I wasn't viewing you like that. And I was like, but that's how I took it. So, and a lot of anger in that too, on my side. And so we had to talk through that of how my lens wasn't what he was intending.
Right.
Communicating
what you heard
to me
wasn't really what he said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that right there, if you can stop in any communication with anyone and just, you don't have to in that moment, you might want to come back later and be like, okay, what were you intending and what did I hear? That is huge in any relationship. But it just doesn't happen because we get so busy in life, and then resentment builds up and these belief systems inside each person build up. Yeah, and it can get really hurtful and it can divide people, and then it doesn't bring connection and community and love and hearing one another. I mean, I was just thinking about some of the girls I see in my office, and as well-intentioned as parents can be sometimes, I think kids hear things through their own little lens of wanting to make their parents proud. And a lot of times parents don't realize that, and what they say comes across as maybe well, I'm not approving of you. And I think if parents knew that, they would stop, because I know their parents love their kids,
Right.
So
right.
That's just another example.
So something that you and I talked about kind of leading into this conversation was reaction versus responding.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So of course, we all need this in our own life. Reaction, a lot of times we can get into a fight or flight mode of, if someone says something to us, our emotions take over, and actually the logical side, our left brain, logical side, and our right brain is the emotional side. Well, when we've gone through any kind of trauma, even if it's little, the emotional side of your brain can come up, and the emotions take over, and kind of you can't think straight. And so you'll react just out of emotion, and then we know where that leads. Here comes anger, here comes any kind of emotion on that other person, and then then that person reacts. And there's just no room to really hear each other, kind of like we were just talking about, what's actually going on. The meta message is actually what we call that. You probably know that. We just hear all the emotion in it, and you don't get anywhere because each person is getting offended. So responding, I think, to me, I just see this step back and think about, before you speak, what are you saying? How are you saying it? How is it coming across? What are you actually trying to say? It just makes me think of the verse that I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, about being slow to speak. And I think the Lord is so true. That's so true in those verses, because that's responding in love instead of reacting in anger or the emotion that has taken over your brain.
Yeah, so we have one of the physicians that works for us here at JourneyWise. He has a saying, take 2 steps back. And it's rooted in the rule about a snake, a poisonous snake in Mississippi. If you turn around and run, the snake can actually catch you. But if you take 2 steps back, the snake doesn't have the ability to get to you. And so he has that saying of take 2 steps back. And that resonates with me. And I think about that a lot. Currently trying to teach my toddler how to do that.
Me
right?
too, my 3-year-old.
Because I can just watch the emotions overtake her. And then I'll see it in myself a couple hours later. And I'm like, wow, I'm doing the same thing.
It takes so much work. I mean, Adam just the other day walked away from me. He said, I'm not talking right now about this because I'm going to react. I was like, no, talk to me right now. And he's like, no. And I had to let him do that. And he was doing that because he loves me.
Right.
Sometimes I can want to get to it, you know, but in order for us to respond, yes, we need to, It does. It takes a lot of work to step back from things because we just want what we want right then. We want it to be figured out, and we're not perfect in that way. So
yeah. Okay, I have one more question to kind of follow up what we just talked about. So you've said a couple of times like little trauma and big trauma. So I think like a lot of people don't understand little trauma. Maybe give us some examples of that. And I think probably a lot of times people would not identify that as trauma in their life, but what that does to us emotionally and in our communication.
So I love to tell people it's really according to the person about how you label something big or small.
Yeah, according to your experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody is so different. I mean, now if you're just talking about trauma, someone may say, going through something, I don't know, like a hurricane or someone, in your family having cancer or something like that, or you yourself going through some type of abuse or something like that. Like that could be considered in general a big trauma, but it really is according to the person. So for instance, I'm just going to use myself. I would consider some little T traumas like in school growing up where I had some teachers say some things to me that weren't outright yelling at me or berating me, but it was how I felt, what they said and how it made me feel and the validity of that and then what it did to my internal awareness about how I viewed myself. And I can go into that more if you want me to, but I don't think this teacher meant that, but that's how it felt to me. And I tell people, however it feels to you, it's valid. It might not be true. And your world and your lens can be valid, which is you just have to validate your emotions, but it doesn't mean they're true. We cannot trust
our emotions
and what they tell us about ourselves and about this world and other people. They lead us astray. So I think I got
That's so good. That's so good. So, okay, in light of that, we can't trust our emotions. We can validate that they're true. I mean, that we experience them,
yes,
right?
valid.
Yes, they are valid. They are real. We feel this way.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel this way. But that they're not always true and we can't always trust them.
Yes.
So what is true? What can we trust?
Yeah, I think going back to the truth of the word, I had these 3 verses that really stood out to me that particularly talking about communicating and knowing, I think as a believer, knowing, I pray a lot. I'm like, is this of me or is this of the Spirit? And so I'll read these verses that I have. Yeah. Proverbs 16:24 is, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. I'll start with that one. And so, of course, anything that is building someone up and really, I think it's checking in with that person to see, is what I just said, like, how are you taking that? And that's showing care and my kind words to them and helping them feel heard and understood. And so that's kind of what I view when I see that verse.
And it's kind of like gives us some parameters in which to judge if our words are kind, right? So if we have kind words, they're going to be sweet to the soul and helpful to the body. They're not going to be damaging. They're not going to taste sour or feel sour when they come in somebody else's ears. It kind of gives us some parameters around that to take our words and go, okay, was that kind? I often have to ask myself that. Now, was that kind?
Yeah. And in communication, a lot of times, like, I'll see a lot, well, I said this and I didn't mean it this way. Okay, well, that's fine. Like, but it's good to kind of take those steps back to say, hold on, wait. But just because you didn't mean it that way doesn't mean it didn't come out that way across the room to that other person.
And you might not need to say it in the
And
future.
you might not have realized that it made them feel that way.
Yeah.
And so we have to be humble and realize that our lens is not the only lens. It's really seeing them. I mean, I think of the Lord is the most humble person, like he was so willing to sit and hear and understand and not put his own lens onto somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
About what he thought was right or wrong.
Yeah, because he knew.
Yeah.
He knew, but he was so patient.
He knew,
with
but
the
he was so
disciples.
patient. Yeah. He's the one who knows.
And by the end, he's like, I mean, are y'all still not getting it?
Yeah.
But for 3 years, just incredibly patient with them.
And when we do take those steps back, we say the kind words and we are slow to speak. A soft answer turns away wrath, and harsh words stirs up anger. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Like both of those, taking the step back, being, soft and calm and quiet. Even if that might not be your personality, I think there's a way if that other person needs it, to say, hey, is this okay? Like, how did you take this? Because I wasn't meaning it that way, but.
I think so easy in our society, it's easy to go, okay, that softness equals weakness. Mm-hmm. And so just to be able to know that actually is strength, that it takes a lot of strength, a lot of self-control, a lot of self-discipline to take that stance of not just throwing out whatever you're thinking, spitting that out on somebody else, but really having the restraint and strength by the Spirit. The Spirit is the one that strengthens us and allows us to go, let me respond differently here.
This makes me think of my self-control with my own children, and my sweet little Mills, who is 5, tells me that when I raise my voice, that I lose my temperature. That's what he says, which I love it. And so I will check, like last night, I checked in with him because, of course, this conversation is making me more aware of it. I said, hey, did Mama lose her temperature any today? Because he'll be sure to like point it out for me. And that's the last thing. And he was like, no, you did okay, Mama. But that's the last thing that I want is him to see, and it's going to happen, but just like me falling forward and saying, Lord, just help me to do that differently today. Like I tell Adam, if I go through the whole day and I don't completely lose it, like I feel like that is my number one goal. Like,
yes.
I'm like, just those calm words, because when I get elevated, I see their little faces. And I'm like, what are they perceiving from me? And I'm being a counselor probably too. I'm like, what's happening inside their little brains? But, so that just made me think of that. And he's very aware of
the other night,
temperature.
I lost my temperature with Josie. And, after a few minutes, I went, okay, I lost my temper there. And Preston kind of looked at me like, that was a little far.
Yeah.
And so I just got down on my knee and I said, Josie, can you look at Mama in the eyes? And I just said, I'm sorry I yelled at you.
Yeah.
Mama didn't mean to yell at you. I'm very sorry I yelled at you. And we've been talking about, how to teach her to be sorry, because that's a hard thing to teach a child. Like
we're all
how to be sorry.
sinful
like,
and prideful.
You don't want to just say you're sorry.
Yeah.
And then if she's not
Yeah.
sorry. So, and for me in that moment, it was like, okay, I think this is how I teach her to be sorry.
Modeling is number one.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
and I'm like, okay, if I go back and I say, I'm really sorry for losing my temperature, like those kind words they weren't kind.
mm-hmm.
Like they, I could have been more calm in saying that or kind. And I agree with you. So I think when we just come back to our kids and say, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Or our spouse.
Oh, yeah. our spouse too.
And or even, anybody.
Or even
friends, family, anybody. Any working relationship.
Right.
Being quick to say, that's that humility, right? Of going, I don't have it figured out. I may not have said the right thing here, and I'm sorry, and being genuinely sorry.
Yes.
So, okay, let's talk about listening, because I think that's such an important part of communication, to be able to know when something's not hitting right with the person that you're communicating with, right? If you're not listening, you won't know that. And then also, you just aren't being effective if you're not listening.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump into like being in session with me for a second. And one thing we were taught in school is, we had like this whole class on listening, and I was like, this is going to be like, why would we have an entire class on listening? My goodness. But we did, and we honed in on eye contact, like truly giving a person eye contact, giving them nodding, giving your body posture, turning towards them instead of away.
Forward. Yeah.
Pacing with them, that's another. So if they're talking, kind of saying, maybe, okay, I think I hear you say this, kind of, throw that in there. Okay, is that? Just kind of almost following them to see what they're saying. And then we had this book, this guy named Sherrod Miller and his wife came up with this book, and they have this cool little thing I wanted to share. It's called The Awareness Wheel. And it's something that's so cool that you have and you might not do it like every day, take your little thing out and do it, but called the awareness wheel. But it's really good to gather your thoughts, and then for each person, this goes into communication and listening. And so you start off with whatever issue comes up, you and this other person, you have an issue, and then in speaking, so say you and I are going to do the awareness wheel, and I have an issue with you, and I say, hey, okay, when you did this, so there's the issue, I thought to myself, you come up with your thoughts, I thought you didn't like me, I thought we weren't okay, I thought you were mad, it made me feel, you go through the feelings, the third thing, I felt sad, upset, angry, I want you, what you want the person to do, I want you to come to me and tell me what's going on. And lastly, what I will do, I will tell you when I'm feeling that way so that you know what you can do too. And so that little thing that we learn, and then here's the listening part. The other person who just heard me say all these things has to then summarize it back.
Oh, wow.
Now, that sounds hard, but really all it's saying, it teaches you to listen, and you learn the more practice you do. So when I'm in session, I'm not doing the actual awareness wheel, but I'm looking at a person saying, hey, I think I heard you say this. You had these kind of thoughts, or you were feeling this way. Is that correct or not? And they'll tell me yes or no. And so you're pacing with that person, and you're giving them a summary, and that is helping them feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
And that's the goal of listening. But how often do we give a summary back to what the person's saying?
That's so interesting. Preston, in his medical training, they teach them about this, right? So when a patient comes in and they give their complaints and whatever, and then he will take what they say and go, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is this, and this. And that's like making sure that he's hearing them and not just putting what he wants or what his brain is already running to try to fix the problem. And so it's a pause step to go, okay, this is how I'm going to hear you. And then the patient can go, well, actually, I meant that it's more like a radiating pain and not as sharp of a pain, for instance.
You're following them and letting them lead, being with them. And I could get just so passionate about this, instead of leading them where you think they should be or where you want them to be, or even where you hope they be, which is not a bad thing, but it's like maybe that's not where they're at. And so a lot of times, even in session with people, I will say, I'm curious about this. Use that word curious in your brain when you're talking with somebody and listening. I'm curious to know, or a lot of times I'll say, I wonder about this. And I'll let them go into that. And so that way I'm not placing my agenda, but I'm just throwing something out to let them know I'm being curious. And then that leads them to want to talk more. So that's just a little bit of like the listening piece. And I think that curiosity is just, and summarizing what you hear someone say is just invaluable. It's just so invaluable. Because that's what we're made for. I mean, we're just made for connection and just being in community with one another. And that is how God made us. I mean, think about how much community he had with his disciples, and they just sat around.
Trinity.
And like he sat around the table and just talked for, just helping them feel heard and seeing them. And I just think about how he knew people. He was studying them and being curious of them instead of throwing his agenda, So, yeah, that it makes me also think of in school, there was this other guy who we learned about. I forget his first name, but Karkuff is his name and last name. And a lot of my people who I was with in school, we would, it was our first time seeing new people, and we were so nervous about we're going to help people or whatever. And we would all say to each other, if we got kind of stuck, just Karkuff. Just, it's okay. If you don't know what theory you're going to use, if you don't know what to do to help them or lead them or whatever, just Karkuff. And all Karkuff is giving them empathy, respect, genuineness, and being curious of them and summarizing to them. And like, that's kind of our go-to, and it works every time because people love to be heard. And so many people haven't been heard in life. So
that's really beautiful. Okay, so I want to ask you about one more thing and kind of along those lines and talking about listening. When we think about listening, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about our digital world of communication, right? So much of our communication is not face-to-face now. So I just think if you ever received a text from somebody, or either you've sent a text to somebody and you thought to yourself, they would not have said that to my face.
Yes.
Right? It's amazing how much more we can say with our fingers or our keyboard or on our phone than we can face-to-face. So, in my nonverbal training, we learned that 80% of your communication is nonverbal.
Yes.
And so if you cut that out, you're cutting out that level of communication when you communicate via text message, via email. And so much of our communication is that.
Which to me, the 80% too is where you get to show the empathy,
the listening,
and the curiosity, and the understanding, and the respect. And that person can visually see that. And so there's this wall that it creates, honestly, between a person and the other person. And it makes it safer in a sense, I think, because then people think they can say whatever they want to say. But I think we're in some of the loneliest times right now.
Yeah.
Because we've lost real communication and listening and hearing each other.
Calling it an epidemic of loneliness in the United States. Yeah.
Our teenagers are so, I had somebody in my office, I've had several people in my office say that, just having real communication, like at a table, at the lunch table or whatever, like doesn't happen. It's all about Snapchat and, texting, not even calling. Because even with calling, you get like a voice.
Yeah. You gain a little bit of that 80% back. And then, in person is even more. Like it's just kind of levels that you kind of gain back from those different.
Yeah. And so, I think about the loneliness in my office of these kids. And so then when you're lonely and you don't get the connection then it leads to anxiety. It leads to depression. It leads to I'm alone. I don't have any. I think another big piece is like somebody else, when you're sitting with somebody, I'm not quite as weird as I thought I was. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
we're all in this together in this life.
Yeah.
And you don't get that.
Right, because they're really sending just parts of their life that they want each other to see, right? And adults do the same thing. We do the same thing. Ours is just Instagram instead of, Snapchat.
But then we don't show internally and vulnerability-wise. Vulnerability takes speaking and talking and getting to those deeper parts that you want that other person to know about. But if we're never doing that, then we're never getting the connection that we need. Oh, and it just makes me so sad for my kids. And, that's why I would so encourage, community. My clients get so sick of me saying that. But I'm just like, where can you find community and not texting? Like
real
community.
And not waiting on somebody else to bring it to you, but really going out and seeking it yourself.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Man, we could just go on and on, Sarah Beth.
I could keep going.
But I think we are out of time.
Okay.
So if there's anything else you want to leave us with, do you have anything else that's just kind of outstanding?
I think just the last piece, I don't know why the word empathy just sticks out to me so much. And, when we can have empathy for somebody else, and I won't go into whole empathy versus sympathy, but trying to put myself in the other person's shoes when I'm talking to them, it creates understanding. I'm being curious. And then I can understand why they are the way they are. And that's connection. And it lessens maybe my anger or whatever I have towards them. So.
And you told me in preparing for this is that's one of the main things you pray for your children and try to teach them. And I had never thought about teaching Josie empathy. I thought about teaching her to love others and that kind of thing, but particularly empathy. So that was a big encouragement to me of something that I can pray for her.
Well, every day I ask the boys, I'm like, who are you kind to today? They get so sick of it, but I don't really care. I'm just going to keep asking. Because I think that's how Jesus is the most kind.
Yeah.
He looks out for who needs to be seen. So that's what I want them above anything. So
to do. Wow, it's beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
I enjoyed it.
It's just been so rich, so good, and we will have you back again soon.
Loved it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Friends, y'all have a great week.
Friends, it's my honor and privilege to get to spend time with you week after week. It is such a joy that you would choose to be a part of our conversation here on the podcast. You are such an important part of what we do. If you like what you hear, I would invite you to share it, pass it along, text this episode to a friend, like, rate, and subscribe to our show. What you do makes a difference. And remember, friend, we're cheering you on.